We're now going to talk to people who are part of the ecosystem which is serving the businesses. And what I'd like to start by doing is to invite our panel to briefly introduce themselves, their organisations, and how they work, perhaps, with the small business sector. Do you mind starting, Jackie?
Yeah, sure. Hi everybody, I'm Jackie Brierton. I'm the founder and currently Vice Chair of Women's Enterprise Scotland, which I set up just coming up for 5 years ago, because having worked south of the border for a number of years, went back to Scotland and realised that not a lot was happening around women's enterprise policy and support. So I can say a bit more about that later, but we've been successful in working with the Scottish Government and publishing a framework, an action framework, which we've tried to bring all the relevant parties into work. But my day job, if you like, is enterprise manager for a rural enterprise facilitation organisation called GrowBiz. And that was originally based on the facilitation model of Ernesto Ciroli, which might ring some bells for some of you. That was 8 years ago, so we don't talk about Ciroli so much now, but I'd like to talk later in this session about the model of enterprise facilitation that we've used and which seems to have been successful and created a community now of probably 300 to 400 small businesses in the Eastern and Highland Perthshire area. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Ruth?
It is good morning, isn't it still? Time flying when you're enjoying yourself. My name's Ruth Lowbridge and I'm Executive Chair of the SFEDI group. As some of you may have heard of SFEDI. SFEDI has been around since 1996. We're the sector skills body for enterprise and enterprise support, which means that we set standards, national occupational standards, which are used as a basis for qualifications, but also they act as idiots' guides to anyone who's thinking about starting or growing a small or micro business, and also the people that support them, people like advisors, coaches and mentors. 15 years ago, like a lot of other organisations, we found ourselves without funding. We were heavily dependent at that time on government funding, which disappeared. I'd like to say overnight, but we actually saw it coming, but we didn't plan for it. So I was on the board at that time and turned up for my meetings, had a nice lunch and went home and didn't think too much about some of the problems and challenges that organisation was facing, until one day we realised there was no money left and we had 25 staff who we had to tell, and we had to give up premises, which were very salubrious in Sheffield, and it made us really go back to basics and think about what a small business actually is, because we're still a micro business. We now employ 20 people. Someone last night said to me, how big is your business? Well, it depends on how you measure it. I think in terms of impact, we're a huge business. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a moment. But my background is, for over 20 years now, I've run my own businesses. I've had a sandwich takeaway shop, I've had a conference centre, a training facility, and also being a training consultant. That all came to bear when I got involved with SFEDI again, in terms of taking the business forward. So from 15 years ago, we've actually built up now a multi-million-pound business. We have a number of strands to our business. We have our Institute of Enterprise and Entrepreneurs, where we have 30,000 members, and they're all made up of small and micro businesses, or the people who support them. We've also got an Ofqual regulated awarding organisation where we have 150 centres throughout the UK, all delivering enterprise or enterprise related qualifications. And we have now, through our institute, centres of excellence which include universities. We have Manchester Metropolitan University, Anglia Ruskin, South Bank, the University of South Wales, and these are organisations who are who have and can demonstrate an entrepreneurial culture, but more importantly, they're actually bringing practical practice, practical learning into degree programmes right across the piece.
Thank you.
Is that enough
No,
for me?
that's great. Thank you, Simon.
Hi everybody, Simon Goon from Business Durham. We're the economic development company for County Durham, and we work across all phases of business growth and all sectors but for retail and leisure. We're there to support the enterprise activity, that pre-enterprise stuff. We do a lot of SME engagement as well as working with the large multinationals. And as I said yesterday morning in my introduction, we fund that through a property portfolio. So how do we support businesses? Well, we provide them with property in a gap where there is a market failure, i.e. the private sector won't supply small offices and small industrial units. We provide them with access to an ecosystem, some of whom are represented here, to get them the support that they need. What we don't do, though, is offer them advice per se. We connect and we help them ask intelligent questions and we help connect them to the right people. And we're there to basically grow the economy of County Durham through the client groups that we work with, helping them create wealth, create jobs, and survive and thrive. So it is about a growth agenda, but we are not always about millions to tens of millions. It's actually, what do you mean by growth? And surviving and thriving is just as good as thriving and thriving. Okay.
Okay. Hello, Agnieszka Włodarczyk from Kraków Technology Park. And first of all, I would like to thank you very much for 2 days of active discussion of setting the direction for SME development in near future. And I will tell briefly about who we are. But my personal feeling is that maybe sometimes we are talking from the different perspective, especially that we are in the international group of SMEs and the institution who support them. But from my perspective and from my experience, and of course it makes the discussion more interesting and challengeable, but we are very common in recommendation. That's my feeling of today and yesterday. And who we are? Kraków Technology Park is one of the key actors of creating and implementing the regional innovation strategy and promoting smart specialization in the region. And our stakeholder is City of Kraków and Małopolska region, State of Poland, the Ministry of Economy, and 3 main universities. So we are very linked to the science. We have, I would say, 2 main activities. One is supporting the startups and SMEs in all business development, from incubation, delivering the trainings, giving funding. We have our seed fund for acceleration of the projects. We are supporting them with the internalization as well. And other scope of our activity is working with big companies, because we are the operator of special economic zone, which gives incentives for big companies to set the businesses in our region, which are in line with smart specialization in the region. Probably you know 2 polls, 3 opinions, but here we work together with the City of Kraków and with the region. And what is very crucial, we defined a smart specialization to strengthen and empower the development of SMEs. But what is more, I would like also to reflect to my previous experience. I was working for 6 years for regional office of Małopolska region, when I dealt with SMEs, and we worked together on the Social Dialogue Commission at governor level. That is the body which may meet on the regular basis, and the participants of this committee, they are a union of employees, employers, and regional authorities. So we covered the most, I would say, eye-king issues talking about public procurement, talking about and how the small and medium enterprises can be competitive versus the big sharks, big companies, and with low cost tenders, how to cooperate versus consortium, because we think that just to win globally, we have really act locally, and we do not have such long tradition of open free market economy. Our transformation took part only 25 years ago. There were some good experiences, but also bad. But we focus on the best practices. So now we want to combine all of this, giving the support for startups, and which is amazing because Kraków is quite lucky. Yes, I'm living in Kraków now, but I'm traveling around. We are the first destination for BPO sector. We hit the Dublin last year, but it gives great opportunity for young people. Every year we have 40,000 students graduating, so it gives them great opportunity to learn the ways of working, communicate properly. But on the other hand, everybody we know it, that this business can one day be here, another there. So we do appreciate, but we think that we also have to find our own place in this ecosystem. And what I'm really impressed, and I do regret I wasn't so brave 20 years ago when I started working, the startups community. Because innovation is great, and the way we work today, the youngers, they don't do to work like that, and we have to understand them, and I was really impressed to see how they can organize themselves, creating great business, entering the international markets without any support. If we ask them, do you need any support? We say, please don't disturb us. We'll come one day, set clear legal requirements. Let's everybody have the chance to do what it is expert at. And I love the sentence I heard today, and subcontract all the rest. So it was amazing. There is a really huge community, and one day if you are in Kraków, I would with pleasure introduce you to those young people, because we have to learn from them how to do it. So that's, I also heard one sentence, I'm just finishing, understand the expectation of your clients, of your partners, and tailor your products to support them, to serve them.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you, Graham.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Graham Moore, Head of Business Development at Atom Bank. Battle-hardened 28-year service on the front line, dealing with SMEs from small business up to large corporate. Don't all but once I'm a banker, but I've left the old banking regime and building something new. So for those that don't know, Atom is now licensed. We are going to be, or will be, the UK's first truly digital bank, digitally in the offering through apps, which is much more efficient than the current service. Looking to launch later on this year into Q1 next year with our offering. So I'm charged with making the SME experience much more efficient and transparent than it currently is, and it's not. It's a shambles at the moment. And that's no disrespect to my colleagues in the other banks. They just inherited legacy systems which don't work. So we've started with a blank sheet of paper and have come at the point of view of what does the SME need. So starting at the end of the journey, working our way back to the front and building systems and processes that will deliver that.
I'm going to come back to you on that in just a minute. Ian.
Hi, my name's Ian Richards. I work for a venture capital company called Northstar Ventures, based in Newcastle. We invest in exciting businesses with good management teams across the region. We've also recently raised a fund which is investing in sustainable not-for-profit organisations. We're not exclusively a tech business, although it is safe to say that a lot of the investments that we make have innovation or a tech slant. As a venture capitalist, I'm quite keen to be seen more as a partner than an investor. We want to help introduce businesses that we invest in to our networks. We will help them with strategy, and we will introduce them to our support network, who can help them with operational stuff. I'm also very interested in bringing ideas that are used in big businesses into the small businesses that we invest in.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, in a moment, I'm going to come back to the other panellists and ask them to respond to some of what we heard earlier this morning. But actually, Graham, who couldn't be with us, has kind of opened his own Pandora's box, can of worms, I'm not sure which. And ask him to just take a minute or two to tell us about what customer service for SMEs looks like or what it's going to look like from a digital bank and what it's going to feel like.
Okay. I can't give too much away because it's under IP at the moment, but I'll tell you what I can, and that wasn't a get out clause, that is legally true. So you've got to start from the basics. What does the current system look like for the SME? And it's pretty poor. We have a firm belief that SMEs want a relationship with the money, not with the bank, and that's quite a culture change. So what do I mean by that? So you as an SME or a small startup, you want access to your money when you want it, and you want decisions about your money when you want it, not when the bank tells you can have it. So if you look at, for example, and we're doing this in a minute, the timeline that it takes from a SME to get money out of a bank from the moment he says I want to borrow money to the point he gets it out through the door, through the legal system, on average it's about 12 to 13 weeks, which is far too long. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it is shorter, but 12 to 13 weeks is far too long. So you come at the point of view, well, how can we improve that? What does good look like? And we're trying to build a system that will significantly shorten that timeline, because you realise, having worked in the industry for so long, that the number of people within the banking sector are there for the benefit of the bank, not for the benefit of the customer, because they're there to make up for the lack of legacy systems, the manual intervention that you've got to have in place to plug the 1980s platform into the 1990s platform that doesn't talk to the 2010. And that's why things go wrong and things do fall between the cracks, and we've seen many examples of that over the last few weeks even. So with a blank sheet of paper, you can start again and think, what does good look like? So you come to the point where we want to deliver a much more efficient and transparent service to the customer. So that means things like trying to get them a credit decision within a maximum of 72 hours. So using an intermediary or a broker network, giving them access to an online portal to drop the information into us in a digital format, such that we can collect data digitally, we can use digital footprints for credit checks and such like, and removing as much of the manual intervention as we possibly can. But the critical decision, are we going to lend, are we not going to lend money, is still manual, and that has to be the case because SME isn't black and white, it's lots of shades of grey. So you've got to have somebody at the back end of the process that can actually make the manual decision to lend or not to lend, rather than automated. So that's what we're in the middle of building at the moment. So the service proposition that we will offer to the customers will be very transparent and very open and honest. And I could go on for ages telling you how we're going to do this, but one of the key things from having the experience of working with the front line with SMEs and startups is banks have lots and lots of data on clients, on your clients and SMEs and small businesses, and they put their arms around it and say, get off, this is our data, you're not having it. But actually, in reality, it's not. It's the client's data that you're making a decision on. So we will actually open Pandora's box a little bit and begin to share data back with customers and give them reports to say, this is what we're doing with your data and this is why we've made the decision we've made. Now, if you're giving me wrong data in the first place, I'm not going to be able to give you the accurate decision. So the customer then can't say, well, it's the wrong decision because your data's wrong if they've given it in the first place. But most banks will not share what they do with the numbers. They don't share the analytics piece that they go through. And all banks do. They have a quasi-scorecard methodology. But that never gets shown to the SME. So how does he know how to improve his business or where to go for advice on how to improve his business? But we've no backbook to worry about. We've no legacy issues to worry about at all. So we're more than happy to share that view with the client or with the with the business, such that they can then improve their own business going forward.
Now, is there any difference in securitisation?
In what way, sorry?
Well, a traditional bank would take security of whatever. So are you any different to that?
There are two forms of debt, two products. Everything else is an iteration of. There's an overdraft and a loan. A loan is simply a piece of debt secured by an asset. That asset could be a commercial property, it could be residential property, it could be guaranteed, stock, shares, cash, government guarantee schemes, whatever you want it to be. We as a funder are still bound by the same PRA regulations and FCA. So will we do unsecured lending? Yes, we will. Will we take different types of assets? It all depends on the individual deal that we've got in front of us, which is why we're not going to be as prescriptive as with the banking. So we will look at every deal on its own merits, which is why we've got the manual underwriting system in the background. So if you've got some odd security that you want to throw at us and we can give it a value and it makes sense to us to take that security, yes, we'll have a look at it.
Okay, I'm sure we're all fascinated by Asset Bank. And maybe some of us are already planning our loan application, who knows. But I think perhaps we should ask Graham to sort of offer a separate seminar at the end of this session next door.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah, sure.
You described about the data and being more transparent with the data and shit.
Yes.
Will there be, or what parts of your service will still be based on a relationship with the SME and talking to them? Is there an opportunity?
There will be an opportunity to do that. But as I said at the start, we believe that the SME wants a relationship with his money, not necessarily with the bank. And you look at the frontline staff that are in the banks, are they that suitable person to give that SME advice? And let's be honest, banks don't give good advice. We're going to look at the last few years in terms of hedging issues and all the other horrible stories that are out there. So we'd rather signpost that SME to somebody that can give the advice, to an accountant or to a working group like Business Durham, for example, where they can get access to proper advice.
I wasn't really meaning advice as much as for the bank to understand the individual business and where they're coming from and how they're thinking of growing, financing, why they finance, the relationship that they used to have with the bank manager.
The traditional relationship role. Yeah. Without giving too much away and going into too great detail, our route to market on day one will be through professional intermediaries. So that's your broker network, and they have to be qualified to be on my panel, so I'm not going to let them on. So they've got to have a track record of being able to give that advice to help shape the proposition, shall we say, or the lending application to us. For those that do come direct to market, I will have a team throughout the country who will be there, not as a relationship model, but be there as a function, I suppose you could say, on day one to help shape the proposition, to put it in front of the bank. Because some propositions and some applications we're going to get, we know aren't going to be fit for purpose. They just don't fly, and you'll see that day to day. But for those that do, there might be a way of saying, actually, that it doesn't quite fit what our policy, but if you did this, it would. So there'll be people on the ground to help shape that proposition, but then once the lending's approved or otherwise, it's then back into the world of the app where we'll give the client rich functionality to be able to get the service that they want.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Fascinating. And what I'd like to do now is to ask the other panelists in particular to reflect back on how, in the light of what we heard this morning, but also in the light of the challenge from Agnieszka about making things relevant to young people, and I feel I'm about the same age or older than all the panel members, I think, is actually, are your services and products fit for the age that we're coming into? Because I've got a horrible feeling that a whole load of things that I avoid like the plague, like Facebook and WhatsApp and stuff like that, are actually completely changing how we should be doing this stuff. So not just that sort of being ready for the IT thing, but generally responding to what was heard earlier. Would you like to start again, Jackie? Is that all right?
Okay, that's quite challenging to think of, but I think what struck me about this morning's discussion and the contributions from the entrepreneurs was that a lot of the same words and things that they wanted from the ecosystem, whichever parts of it they were engaging with, were very similar. So people were using words like providing a sounding board, providing empowerment, generating a trust, relationship building was core to a lot of it. And it struck me that actually at whatever stage a business is at, it does need all of that alongside the more transactional input that the business needs at that point in time. But there's a sort of general, I think, misperception in the marketplace that, okay, you need a lot of that at an early stage of a business. You need to be building people's confidence and their ability and general sort of know how to get that starting point. But somehow 3 years down the line, they don't need that same kind of level of empathy and relationship building. And of course, I think all of our experience is that that isn't the case, and that you continue to need that. So I think that's probably something that a lot of us need to think about in terms of where we're intervening in the process, in the business development process, and how we're actually engaging with people, because we certainly come across a lot of advisors in the, if you like, the formal business support infrastructure who do treat their clients as a transactional relationship where there's very little in the way of empathy built up. And certainly when the clients come to us from a rural perspective, haven't felt that they've been able to trust that relationship. And often, and I speak from a Scottish point of view, we still have, I suppose, what the equivalent of the old Business Link brand was. The brand in Scotland is Business Gateway. And Business Gateway used to be contracted and delivered by a whole range of organisations, including enterprise trusts, which were very much linked to their local communities, right through to bigger private sector organisations. But more recently, because the whole contract was transferred from Scottish Enterprise into the local authorities, over the last few years we've seen a move for the local authorities to start delivering Business Gateway themselves. So in effect, the business advisor is going and relating to the client, wearing the local council, local authority hat, which immediately, I think, provides a problem in terms of building that sense of trust and empathy with the client, because businesses interact with their local authorities in all sorts of ways, but they don't necessarily want them to know all about their businesses, and they don't really feel that those are the people that they want to build a relationship with. So I think there's going to be interesting challenges ahead for that. But if I bring that back to the example that I mentioned, where I'm involved in running this rural facilitation model in Eastern and Highland Perthshire. So it's a very rural area. Our biggest town is only 12,000 of a population, and this model's been around for about 8 years now. And it's very much based on working with people, not in any way trying to put people in a box at an early stage, because I think that's another one of the problems we have within business support infrastructure. We tend to want to label somebody when they come into the system. We try and make out whether they're going to be simply self-employed, a micro business, a growth business, and we put them in a box, and then they go on a trajectory which is often not the right one for them, because we've tried to establish that at too early a stage. So we try and work with people very much as individuals, and people come to us with all sorts of levels and stages, but with all sorts of issues as well. I mentioned an example earlier of the woman who presented with a marketing issue, and in fact she had a whole lot of other things that we had to work with. And what's interesting is the sheer range of individuals and businesses that come to us. Their alternative in terms of mainstream business support is to go to one of the cities that we're nearest to, which are Perth and Dundee. But more and more, what they really want to do is engage locally. They want to have somebody that they know they can engage with within a few miles of where they live, that will meet them wherever is suitable, whether it's a local coffee shop or their home or wherever. And they really want to connect, and connectivity is absolutely core and central to everything that this model's about. Because it's not about, and I use the term facilitation, I don't know if you know, Ernesto Ciroli actually trademarked enterprise facilitation. So we're very careful not to use it too much in case he tries to charge us money for it. So we refer to facilitating as the process. So it's very much about trying to connect people at an early stage, try to avoid giving them advice, although guidance and counselling is very much part of it, and a coaching approach. And I just drew a little circular, the sort of virtuous cycle that I think we've managed to evolve. And very, very briefly, so an individual comes from whatever direction. They might be referred by the local business gateway, they might be referred by the job centre, they might have heard word of mouth that somebody else has got support. So they come from lots of different directions. We usually start with a one-to-one meeting to try and just find out where they are and what's happening. We have around about 6 or 8 peer group meetings a month, around sometimes different sectoral issues, or it might be around a learning issue. So we immediately try and identify if one of those peer groups might be helpful. So the woman I mentioned earlier found the peer group of entrepreneurs who have health issues really helpful because she could share some of that. And then they get more and more involved in connecting with some of the local businesses. If they've identified that they really want to get their bookkeeping off their shoulders, we can give them 2 or 3 bookkeepers. We never recommend 1, 2 or 3 in the community that they can go to. And it is all about using the local community. These clients, if you think of their journey, that client then becomes somebody 6 or 9 months down the line that has got something to give to a new client, because even that short experience will be very relevant to somebody who's newly starting something. So we'll encourage them to share that through the peer group system. And we've now got a situation where, I know on Monday night, for example, we had a peer group learning session all about online selling and e-commerce, delivered by one of our clients that came to us 18 months ago to set up a little branding agency. And so it becomes a circular, self-help, sustainable model where the clients become the coaches and the advisors to new businesses. They form relationships. In some cases, they form formal collaborations. So just recently, we helped a care and wellbeing cooperative to come together, which were 9 individuals, all providing some kind of service into the social care agenda. And that's become a really important area for business opportunities, actually, through self-directed support and the fact that people in receipt of social care can spend their budgets the way they want. So theoretically, they can actually buy services from people in their local community. So this care cooperative is 9 micro-businesses who will all get support through a central administrative marketing sort of conduit for clients, where they're not going to have to worry so much about marketing themselves. They can just get on with providing the service and the expertise. We then have a thing called the GrowBiz Exchange, where people sign up, and they do this very, very happily. They will pledge 2 hours a month, minimum of 2 hours a month, expertise, help, advice on an area that they feel that they're knowledgeable and pretty good at. In exchange, they don't have to exchange this with a specific person, then they'll put up what they would like, and we've actually got a database now of around 40 businesses who have pledged this 2 hours a month, and we have a get-together every 2 months for the exchange and speakers, and that's formed its own network. We also have a women's enterprise network because we recognise that 65 to 70% of our clients are women, and some of them were more comfortable coming together as a women's network, and that helped them to develop to the next stage, and that's been very powerful as well. So what I'm trying to describe is that you're kind of moving clients through, you've created that sort of, all those things, those good things that we talked about, the trust model. They feel that they've been dealt with empathetically, they've started to build relationships with other businesses, they know where they can go for expert advice and subcontract services. And now we've started formally training some of them as mentors. So we've now got 10 mentor matches locally, and we're just training another 12 mentors this month. So you then are using the skills and the goodwill of these people, and they're now providing the mentoring to newer clients and getting a huge amount back from that. And then we've also got 3 examples of these clients who are now on our board of directors and are contributing back into the strategic development of the organisation as we go forward. So it's been a very interesting and exciting kind of development, which the Scottish Government and Scottish Enterprise they've now come to us because we're the only rural enterprise support model that they've been able to find in Scotland, which seems hard to believe, to be honest. But we've now got the opportunity, given that we've got leader funding for the next 5 years in rural areas across 21 areas in Scotland. And because, I don't know if it's the same in England, but rural enterprise is now a priority area within leader. It was never actually articulated as that before, and we couldn't even give direct business grants. But the next programme will allow us to really work with rural-based businesses And when I say rural-based businesses, the vast majority of these are not farm or agricultural or land-based businesses. It's actually working with a huge diversity of businesses that are operating often alongside the agricultural or farm businesses. So we've now got an opportunity over the next 5 years to use leader funding to really try and grow this model. I don't think it should be transplanted into other areas, but hopefully other areas will take the elements that they think they can make work and grow it organically to suit their own area. But at least we've got some examples and some experience and something that we can almost package and help people to grow. So.
Okay. Thanks very
model.
much, Jackie. Sorry.
Interesting one, yeah. No, just to say it's an interesting model that talks about engaging locally, which we've talked about, connecting, which we've talked about, ecosystem, what we've talked about. So it's an interesting model. Yeah.
Could you repeat the question, please?
I particularly in terms of looking going forward, and I think what we're very interested in is how might things change and how might the offer of your organisations change to reflect some of the challenges that we heard about this morning and the challenges that came from the entrepreneurs this morning. And I kind of lay on top of that and the whole technology issues of how the web is just changing the way we can and should be thinking about everything in terms of transactions and information exchange and so on and so forth.
Okay. Well, I think this morning, one of the things that struck me very much, and I think about myself now here as an owner manager looking out there for the type of support and the type of guidance that I would be looking for. We've been involved very much in mentoring, and I know mentoring is different things to different people, but I think mentoring actually cuts across the whole area of business support. Another question that came up this morning was, should we categorise people? Should there be a trainer, a coach, a mentor, and what should there be, a consultant? I don't think actually that matters to an owner manager. I think they want what they want when they want it. And this whole trust thing comes into its own. Because if they trust the person, no one's ever asked me, are you a trainer? Are you a coach? Are you a mentor? Are you an advisor? Nobody's ever asked me that. Because I think it's all about somebody having the trust and being able to realise very quickly that you actually have the experience or you've got the knowledge and understanding to be able to help them at that particular point in time. Sometimes they don't need help, they just need someone to talk to get things into perspective. I find that actually when people start to talk, they probably have the answers themselves. It's just they haven't been able to verbalise what's been going round their head and what they've been taken to bed with them every night and waking up with every morning. In terms of how we've been presenting or we continue to grow and present our business support offer, or however you would want to place that, is we do that in a number of ways. We've done it through engaging. You talk about cooperation and collaboration. I don't think people know how to do that very well, personally. I think they talk about it a lot and it is a good thing to say, but actually when we talk about real partnership working, real collaboration, real cooperation, because I do ask the question, when people want to raise the profile of this entrepreneurial culture, how many organisations across the North East are actually collaborating? How many universities, colleges and training providers come together and talk about? Because unfortunately, funding actually becomes the competitor, becomes the competitive element, and also fishing in the same market for the same people. And that stops entrepreneurial thinking as far as I'm concerned, because how can we collaborate and cooperate if actually in our mind we're thinking the people who we're going to collaborate and cooperate with are probably our competitors. And as long as we carry that along with us, then I don't think we're going to move forward very far. And I think sometimes funding drives us to do that. But actually there are some people in the North East and across the country that I've met who are truly entrepreneurial, who truly have that vision of what it is to try and sustain an entrepreneurial culture. And we try to do that by demonstration. We try to show how you can collaborate with people. We collaborate with government. We don't always want to collaborate with government. We don't always agree with what government says. However, what we do is we work with them to try and influence where we can, to try and access funding where we can, because at the end of the day, who we try to help are the owner managers themselves. My own personal political stance, or not that I have any, but if I had a political stance, or my own personal feelings don't get in the way of us doing good work, to try and help the people that we're trying to help and provide them with the support they need. So we do things in a number of ways. We work with our centres of excellence. I did mention some of the universities, and all of those universities use the same model in terms of being able to validate what they do and being enterprising themselves, but they do it in a completely different way. So the 4 universities that I talked about there, they're all entrepreneurial universities, but they will engage with us in a very different way depending on their audience and depending on who it is that we're trying to help. So their student offer is very different, which it should be, across the piece, and we engage with them and we help them in different ways because our role is to support them because they're the ones on the ground who are actually doing the work face-to-face, day-to-day. We do it through, we run a programme called Get Mentoring. I don't know whether anyone heard of that. It was a £1.9 million project funded by the Department for Business Innovation and Skills, where we recruited and trained over 15,000 volunteer enterprise mentors. Some of you were involved in the delivery of that. What I'm sure you'll be able to tell the rest of the group is that we work with delivery partners. We don't try to do it ourselves. We share the funding. We make sure people on the ground who can engage with the right people work with us on those types of projects. That to me is true collaboration. Yes, we could have delivered it all ourselves and we could have kept the money. But you know, that's not getting to 15,000 people because we couldn't have done that on our own. We needed the delivery partners and we needed them to trust us to know that actually next time we want their backing. I don't know how many times I've put my name to a bid but never ever seen the light of day after they got the money. Don't know if anybody else has had that experience. But I want to make sure that when we put something forward and we ask people to engage with us, that they actually then benefit from that engagement themselves. But more importantly, the end user, the owner manager, the startup business actually gets the benefit of that. So we work with people like, we use that mentoring. That mentoring project actually gave us a lot of collateral, I'll say. But all of that, the resources, the videos, the online learning, everything is out there in the public domain. If you want to have access to that, it's an archived site, but all of the information, all the materials are available, and that's getmentoring.org. Everything's there. We want to share. We've got little pocket books that people can use. Lots of things that came out of that, which has a much wider remit than we have ourselves. As I said, we're a micro business. We can't do everything ourselves. We've really pushed this whole idea of collaboration and cooperation. We've worked with banks. We've trained over 1,000 bank mentors, we call them, and they're out there voluntarily 1 day a month helping, and these across the 5 major high street banks, sharing their expertise. And it's not all financial expertise. But what the banks have said is, what that brings back to their organisations is huge. They get so much out of being able to provide that mentoring support because they're then finding out what's actually happening out there in the real world with the small businesses that they're mentoring. We've done a lot of work with women. We're running Meet a Mentor events. Sorry, I feel like I'm promoting now, but Meet a Mentor events across the country. We have one in Newcastle next week. And this is all about engaging with the small and micro businesses and that might be their first step into business support. Because one of the things I think about business support is that people don't actually often know that they need it, and they're not very good at reaching out for it. So the more that you can take it to them in ways that they will understand. So for instance, we would pick venues that would be quite interesting for them to go to. We did one in London at the Ruth Gardens, and anyone who's been, it's quite a nice place to go to. So it's about encouraging the small businesses to come into places where maybe they wouldn't have an opportunity to go. And interesting places for them to engage with.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if I've answered your questions, but maybe just giving some examples of what we're doing.
I've really got an eye on the time here, and I really want to be able to get the floor involved. So if our others could really try, that would be fantastic, Simon. Thank you.
I summarise your question as, are we fit for purpose?
Yes.
And clearly the answer is no, because no organisation is fit for purpose. And if you are, put your hand up and I'll escort you off the premises, because that's lying, isn't it? Actually, or is it? That's a really good question. Anyway, are we fit for purpose? I think we do as good a job as we can. You know, we position ourselves as the economic development company for Durham. We don't position ourselves as the business support organisation for Durham. We position ourselves as the economic development company, and we're helping to grow the economy. I think we partner with our client bases and our businesses. A key underlying thread within our business plan is raising aspirations within the different client groups that we engage with. That whether that be a child in school through our very successful Future Business Magnates competition that partners secondary schools with businesses and takes through a structured year-long enterprise initiative that's been going for over a decade, all the way through to engaging with somebody who wants to start up a business that we've connected in through our partners in the enterprise agencies, through to a multinational manufacturer who we want to help them to do more upstream activity here. How can we help raise those aspirations and everything in between? We believe actually that a key facet in doing that is facilitating peer-to-peer networking and the opportunities to get the people who've done it to tell those people who are thinking of doing it. Because even if we put ourselves in that advice network, I mean, I've worked in the chemical industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, I've worked globally, I've worked for blue chips and small companies, I've run my own consultancy, and I did a bit in academia. There's a big rear view mirror, unfortunately, with lots of issues behind me. But what that means is that I've got lots of experience, but I'm currently working in this context, and my experience is only so relevant. And within the fast-moving world that we're in, it's out of date quite quickly. So actually what we're better off doing is making sure that those people who are living it today can advise those who are experiencing it today. And so we've developed a series of key business park communities around the key industrial nodes in Durham, where we facilitate those businesses to come together, to share news, to share network, to work together to build their environment, whatever that might be, skills, the physical environs, the verge cutting, the litter, getting the traffic lights changed at Peterlee so that the wagons can get out without trying to take out all the other cars that are coming through. And facilitating them coming together. We've created this Durham Tuesday network as a place where people can come and meet other businesses, engage with providers of finance, providers of legal support, whatever it might be. We run NetParkNet, which is a big science and technology network in the northeast, linked to our NetPark Science Park. Actually today we've got an enterprise day up at our rural hub, the Dale Centre up in Stanhope, where we're just promoting the opportunities for enterprise and bringing lots of providers together who, the enterprise agencies, we've got a firm of accountants, we've got a legal firm, we've got a marketing organisation to help businesses come in. Now, we want to flog our offices up there as well, but actually, it's offices with a service. So I think because we are operating a business and we are acting as a landlord, we've probably got a good understanding of what are the challenges facing some of our clients as well. So it is about forming those partnerships, and that's the critical thing I think around it. How do we partner with people to enable them to grow and help them intelligently access the network? In terms of the second point around how do we use technology, we've spent a lot of time over the last few months looking at this, and we're about to launch a new website this week with a whole range of sort of social media strategies around that, trying to get everybody to adopt that and work on that. And we're looking at how we can better curate content, which might lead to some curation, but ultimately it's about collaboration, and there's no point us reinventing the wheel. So if you have got great content, please send us the links and we'll happily blag it and plagiarise it and give you the right reference, but we'll certainly tweet about it and use that where we can, and that would be appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's useful. Thank you. Maybe if you just let me, maybe like to throw it out to the venture capital, because we haven't really heard from you yet, so we'd like to give you a chance.
So in terms of challenges from this morning, I heard quite a bit about the support network, and I think as Simon said, one of the issues that we've all got to look at is, are we reinventing the wheel? If we're trying to do something, could somebody do it better? So yes, there are people who have mentoring programs and all that sort of stuff, but we deliberately haven't set up our own mentoring program. We have a network of people that we will introduce our portfolio companies to, or if people come and see us and we don't invest, we're quite happy to say, actually, this is not one for us, but this is a guy who could probably help you with the sales strategy. Why don't you have a word with him? Growth Accelerator exists. I'm aware people's experience of Growth Accelerator is sometimes a bit patchy. That's not Growth Accelerator. That is the Growth Accelerators who are on Growth Accelerator, and that is down to building relationships. That is down to speaking to those people and thinking, oh, actually, I could quite like working with you, even if you have got a pinstripe suit on, or I don't want to work with you because you don't understand me, and you don't want to try and understand me. So I think around support networks, there is a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of things you can find. Sometimes it is as simple as just Googling, but sometimes it's slightly more nuanced than that. Maybe you've got to speak to your bank manager or your accountant or your friends or something like that. I think in terms of relevance to young people, as somebody mentioned, the internet has provided a massive amount of challenges and opportunities. We're investing in a lot more web-based applications that have got a lot more relevance to young people. Gaming is a massive industry. Ignite 100, which is probably one of the most respected tech incubators in the country. We have an investment in that, work in partnership with them. They're seeing a lot of really exciting stuff. My colleagues tell me that in terms of gaming, I'm probably not the target market. I can quite understand that. But it's a massive industry, and there's a lot happening in it. So that was me in a few sentences.
Thank you. I think maybe perhaps because we are getting on a bit and we've got a very short space of time left, if we could throw it open to the floor, any particular questions that you can either direct individually or globally at the entire panel, preoccupations, we've heard a lot of things, there's been a lot of sort of discussion opening up things, but what do we do next? And I think what I'm hearing here is there's a lot about collaboration also amongst the sport institutions, amongst the organisations, sorry for using the word sport again. There's a lot of people perhaps doing what they're good at and referring to other organisations where they know that those things can be going on. There's elements maybe of, if we get together, there are some practical things, new things that we might be able to do together. I think there are quite a lot of opportunities in that sense, but I'd like to just first of all throw it open to the floor and see if there's any more other discussions, other points, other key questions that you think we haven't tackled. Go on, Alan, and then Isabella's got the mic, so if you don't mind, yeah?
No, I've just been listening. There's some fantastic schemes, opportunities, but what come from a business owner's perspective, I think it's so diverse and so complicated, is where do you start from? And I think this is something I think it's got worse in the last few years. I'm not defending the RDAs in any way, but there seems to be a need for some body or some. Agnieszka, you talked about Małopolska region, and so you seem to be operating cohesively as a region, because that is the way that it's structured in Poland. And I just wanted, my question really is, what do you think? Do you think it's easy for a business owner now to access these services?
Could I answer that question? I think the answer is yes. I think it, and the reason I say yes is that people come and ask us, people sit in front of us, talk about their issues, and if we can't help them, we pass them on to other people who can. There is a lot of that happening, but with the breadth of support has grown, and with that breadth of support, there is going to be more complexities in accessing it, but I still don't believe it's hard. Now, it might be naivety, it might be in that I'm on the inside of it, but when I go to networking events and I bump into, people who could say help with a sales strategy, or an HR consultant, or a lawyer, or an accountant, and you ask, what are they there for? It's exactly for that. It's networking. It's it's meeting SMEs. It's I don't actually think I have a need for you, but actually a mate of mine was saying he does, and I just think it's about our own personal sales strategy. We are looking to meet people. We are looking to be introduced to people, not necessarily because we can do something with them at that particular moment, but we all get business cards. We all have CRM products. When I say CRM products, mine's a business card holder on my desk, but it's still a CRM product of sort. It's a bit more manual than other people's, and often you flick through cards and think, oh yeah, he would be good at that. So I think you can access it.
Yeah, I'd like to. Both Ruth and Simon would like to say something. So
I think it is complicated, but that's the nature of choice. So can I just do a little experiment? Who's got an iPhone 4? Can you hold it up? Who's got an iPhone 4S? Who's got an iPhone 5? Who's got a 5C? Who's got a 6? Who's got a 6 Plus? Okay. Who's got a Lumiere? Who's got a Samsung? Who's got an LG? And I tell you what, let's look at the iPhone 6. There's 3 colours and 3 different sizes of gigabytes you can get. And then who's got a case on their phone? How many people drive a Ford Model T in black? Because that's what you could buy when Ford developed the production line. Now there are thousands of different cars out there if you look at all the variations. I was speaking to somebody who supplies Qashqai seats, and he has 2 hours and 15 minutes to get a seat to the production line. And you think, well, that can't be hard, can it? Except when you think, is it right or left-hand drive? Is it full leather, part leather, or cloth? Has it got heated and cooling? What colour? Is it electric or manual? Does it have anything in the headrest? Where are the airbags? Choice. We live in a choice world, and business support, for the good actually, is part of that. And if you include the business support environment, all of those private providers, many of whom are out here as consultants, then actually I think that's a good thing, because most of these people would otherwise be out of work. So I'm sorry, that's the nature of living in a modern democracy in a capitalist society.
can I get Ruth and then we'll get Ruth?
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see how growth hubs kind of resonate with across England, particularly, though I'm sure people will know already, but there will be 39 growth hubs, and they're all linked to the local enterprise partnerships. I think the local enterprise partnerships has been interesting how they have manifested themselves, whether they have or not, might be the question, and how the growth hubs, fortunately or unfortunately, most of the growth hubs are linked to LEPs and therefore to local authorities. Whether or not that will provide the choice that people will need, I'm not answering that question, but it'd be interesting just to see how that develops, because it almost moves back to the local services for local people and then RDAs.
Just Jane and then Keith.
I was struck by Simon describing choice in terms of the mobile phones, but those phones are being sold to us. So I'm quite interested in this notion of us selling enterprise or our offerings to various different communities out there that might be interested in accessing it. And I suppose, how does that skew the offerings that are being made available? Is it actually that what we find is that certain providers are more effective at selling a proposition as opposed to it being a good service?
Well, sorry, if you've got a grant to deliver something, you're going to have targets. You're not going to sit there and wait if you want to get a second grant. And if you're a private sector consultant, whether you're part of McKinsey, the Boston Group, or a one-person organisation, sales and business development is part of that. We live in a marketed, communicated, sold to society, and that's the same. Now, are we, like Heineken, refreshing the parts that others don't reach? Good question. But I'm sorry, everything's being flogged at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can I ask you a broad question? You're all involved in support of one form or another. Ian mentioned about technology area, where you've got incubator units and this, that and the other. Are there any other market sectors that you see across the piece that have more innovation going on or are more prevalent in terms of how you go about things? I'm particularly interested in food, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. What are the market sectors that are sort of really showing some difference these days?
Please, yes.
Fintech and service technology. So how do you enable better services and financial transactions to occur is really quite big. I didn't realise the other day I learnt there were 45,000 people in the northeast of England employed just in fintech, which is pretty impressive actually considering the size of the economy. I think there's lots of evolution going on in healthcare in terms of technology provision, but more importantly I think service provision to help deal with an aged population that's living longer with illness. But how do you help with the NHS? There's some exciting stuff going on in there. I'd say where I get most excited though, and that's in what you would call the good old-fashioned engineering and manufacturing businesses, because there's some phenomenal innovation going on with some extremely bright people doing extremely clever stuff in what you'd be seen as just metal bashing. And has those metal bashers developed service offerings as well, which is really quite interesting. And seeing the evolution of some of those business sectors, business models sit on top of a traditional mom and pop shop, if I can use that phrase, is very exciting. So actually I've seen it's happening across all sectors. And I don't think you could say, I think digital technology is often, in my opinion, wrongly associated as being the only thing. Well, that's because it's sexy and it's new and it's unfamiliar to a lot of us because it's always pushing the edge and stuff like that. But actually there's innovation happening all the time. If there weren't, people would be going out of business left, right and centre. And thankfully, they're not. So.
Alan.
Well, I'd just like to ask a rather direct question. I mean, if somebody asked me on the basis of experience what would be the ideal world for small business support, I would say that it was owned by small business. The problem with the last 30, 40, 50 years is more and more agencies running after public money to justify themselves with numbers and things like that. I'm not sure they do. I'm not saying they don't do a good job, but if I was to evaluate any of your agencies, I wouldn't talk to you. I'd go out and talk to the small business community and ask them how much they owned it. They really found ownership of it. How much there was added value in the feeling of what you were doing. And I would judge you by those questions. I always felt that when we're in the centre, we should be judging ourselves in that way. And when I deal with entrepreneurs, I usually say to them, well, let's not think about what you think about your business, but let's see you through the eyes of your customers, your suppliers, your bankers, and the Inland Revenue, and everybody else, and let's judge you by them. And I think that key customer is the owner, and ideally I'd like to see a world where the thing is owned by the small business community, not by the chambers of commerce, because they don't really represent ownership in many ways of businesses. Some do, some don't, depends on who's running them. But I'd like you to respond to that. I mean, if I was to go around and ask your communities how much they were owned by the small business and talk to small businesses.
Could I start then?
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. You should do that. If you're talking about ownership in terms of owning a concept of involvement with my business, you should ask the people that we invest in, and indeed our fund holders do. So our fund holders, it is a relationship where an enterprise will ask us for money, and we will either say yes or no. That's we have a finite amount of funds, and everybody has the right to apply, but everybody can't have it. But the fund holders will talk to our customers about their experience with us. So I think that we should do that.
Just picking up from my perspective at Atom. Atom is an SME. Well, it's not even quite an SME. It's a startup. It was started 12 months ago. For those that don't know, it was funded in its entirety on day one by businesses from the Northeast. So have we got any skin in the game? I guess is the question in terms of our advice. Yes, we have. We're all shareholders in the business. We've put money into it. We're all there 24/7, so we've got a huge amount of empathy for the SME community. Banking is traditionally sort of 9 to 5, so you start at 9, you go home at 5, and that's it. You don't think about your business particularly until you get back to work on the Monday. But our world is 24/7, sleepless nights, waking in the middle of the night, having phone calls, texts and things between colleagues who are doing the same thing. To say it was funded by businesses from the North East, and that will continue. And we've grown that funding base from within the North East. Yes, we've now got some city investors because you have to get the capital you need. But primarily, Atom is a North East business, and we'll stop in the North East in Durham.
I would refer to the question which was asked in the previous round question, and I would say first of all that starting 20 years ago we've got our mission, our strategy. We knew what we want to do. We knew with whom we want to do the innovation change transformation in Poland, in our Kraków Technology Park. However, the real life, I would say, was our best advisor and teacher, mentor. So, in fact, there was the SMEs who made us to tailor the advice to their real need and expectation, and to meet the unaddressed, unmet customers' needs. And when you ask me what was the transformation, at first when we started supporting SME, it was almost 100% support. Now we together building the trust-based relationship, understanding each other, talking to each other with no assumption, we discovered that it's not working anymore because the responsibility has to be shared between two parties. So now then it was 75 to 25, then now it's 50-50. And that is, I think, how the grown-up business ecosystem has to work. That is my reflection. And I would like also to tell you one more funny thing, because technology and innovation as a driver, I'm tapping with one finger, but I said yesterday with our roundtable discussion that business has no age and gender, and I think that it's open for everybody. And the sample I want to tell you about is the globalization, the situation which happened in Boston. There was a hydrant? Yes. Okay, and local society suffered every strong winter with the problem because the hydrant was covered with the snow. So the rescue couldn't come on the time, couldn't find a proper hydrant to support an accident which happened. So one guy created the game, and he said, let's adopt the hydrant. Our neighbors, let's do it. So it started, very popular now, and it's still working. That he created the game rivalization. That neighbor was responsible to take care of the hydrant, doing two digs of the spade to take away the snow, and it worked. And then going further, they said, all right, my neighbor is doing nothing, and the thing that he's doing nothing has come on with my house being in danger. Okay, so I will invade the hydrant, I will adopt it, and you know how it starts, because it's the life. So, talking about innovation in food production, I was working for 3 years for a safe resourcing office, and I know how hard at first it was to understand each other position, We were entering the Polish food to the UK market, and I'm happy that I'm coming back and we have British week in the delicatessen shops all over the Poland. So I do hope to some English and Scottish food over there. But what we did was, the innovation you've got in the packaging and producing the products was really amazing. And I still believe there is still, the sky is the limit, so there's a lot to happen over there.
Picking up Alan's question specifically, I would take it one step further. I don't think they should own. I think we should partner. Because if you own, you don't know what you don't know. And therefore, the fundamental premise that's been here over these last couple of days is how do we improve the ecosystem? And you only do that by seeking external view. And I think it's Jobs who's often misquoted by saying, if Henry Ford have asked people what they want, they'd have said a faster horse. And there's something about that in this. So it's about how do we partner and work together rather than transfer that complete ownership. Should we ask our client base how we're doing? Can we do it differently? Can we do it better? Most definitely. How do we innovate and move forward? Yes, we've got to do that. But I don't think it's ownership, I think it's about partnership.
I'm not sure about the words, but and as I said, partnership sometimes doesn't work, so it depends on how you would look at partnership. But in terms of having that balance between how much is owned and how much is done by collaboration is an interesting one, probably not a debate for this one. Because I think some people do say that we're partnering, but actually in real terms they're not. They've actually got in their mind a very clear idea of what it is that they're going to deliver. Sometimes that's pushed by funding. And so therefore that's what the audience gets. I think what we do, we don't do everything well, but what we do, and this is where our, I suppose, links to academia come in that Lee Sear heads up SFEDI Solutions. SFEDI Solutions is actually our research and evaluation arm, and that's a really important part of our work, that we research everything, make sure we talk to the people that matter. We take that research and we build that into whatever offer we have. We then evaluate that through, but often what happens is we only evaluate the things where we're asked to evaluate. So we'll only evaluate things that are either the funding partner asks for that evaluation, or the client asks specifically. We do some work which is funded by Lloyds Bank, they ask for an evaluation. I think what we're actually not very good at is going out to a much wider audience and making sure that actually we are engaged. So if I ask myself the question about how much does our small businesses own, and I think about our IOE membership, actually I'm quite ashamed to say probably not enough. And that maybe that's something I take away from today, that going back and thinking actually we need to do that a lot better.
Jackie?
I think, speaking from the point of view of a very bottom-up kind of community-based organisation, I would say most of the businesses we work with feel a sense of ownership over the organisation, and we're currently having an evaluation done to us by Scottish Enterprise, and I've heard how the clients have described what they think of us, and it is that sense that, you know, we're theirs, and they know that they could influence what we offer and how we go forward. And from the model I described earlier, most of them are now playing a role in. So I think, and then they become directors. It's a charitable organisation. But I think your question raises another issue around the role. It hasn't come up that much in the last day and a half. The role of the formal business representative organisations and whether they are actually playing a contemporary role in 2015 that is pertinent and valid for what their business members are looking for. Because if I look at the way our chambers, the FSB, the IOD, right up to the CBI operate, I can't see that they're operating any differently now, despite the huge change in business and technological environment, than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. So perhaps that's the question we need to put back to them. And also, you know, how much ownership do their members feel of them, given that they're actually sustaining those organisations?
Okay. Right. Absolutely last question, because it's nearly 1 o'clock.
Hello. I want to raise a question that relates to the theme of the conference, and the strapline is Back to the Future. And what I'd actually like to do is flip that over and say, let's go forward to the future, and ask you to reflect on your various services and ask, how do you frame those services in the future now? What you've described and discussed as the panel is pretty much about the here and now, what you're currently doing. I want to understand essentially the business support services of the future for the future now.
Okay, could we maybe get you to encapsulate that in, very rapidly? Otherwise we'll end this conference where we started it. I mean, it's a really, really good way just to make that link. You may just think about it and encapsulate the essence of the future now?
Shall I go first? It'll be a very quick answer. The simple answer is I don't know. And the reason that I don't know is that part of what we do as a venture capitalist is core. We invest in businesses and we will come up with our strategy, but our strategy will be around trying to back competent management teams into exciting businesses and make some return on them. But part of our strategy in the future will be reacting to what is happening in the wider world. So that's the only answer I can give.
Okay. From our perspective, yeah, we are a bank that is based on the future, you could say. So we're already designing product services 2-3 years out at the moment. And just to give you a little bit of a snippet as to what some of those are, the holy grail of banking is telling you as a customer or an SME what you're going to do with your bank account before you know it. So it's predictability. And we've just very recently partnered with Durham University in the Maths department to look at the analytics piece. Because the way that SMEs now looking at the financial accounts is things like Xero, which is an accountancy package in the cloud. The ideal is trying to match your accountancy package with your bank account to give you real-time cash flow. Once you've got real-time cash flow, that is the holy grail. So us telling you as a bank, yes, we can help you. Oh, no, we can't. If we can't, we'll signpost you somewhere. So that's what we're working on at the moment, one of the products anyway.
Mm-hmm. My answer is, and my boss is listening, is lean management, you would say, and user experience. And saying user experience, what we do, and I think it's really added value, we test product and services in their real life for SMEs who cannot finance the tests and experiments by themselves because they are not big enough. So we do such service. And I would also say citizen-driven innovation approach. That is my answer.
We're actually going through that debate at the moment, and in large part is why we sponsored this conference. So the answer to that often relies in the product that we get out of that, so it's in your hands.
There's the challenge.
So you should have sponsored
That was
the
very
conference.
slick. That was very slick.
But it's true, actually. It is genuinely true, as I said at the beginning.
Yeah. I think ours has got to be globalisation. I mean, one of the things that we are challenging ourselves with is how to take a UK-centric offer, business support offer, into an international and global market. And those, if I was to look forward 5 years and bring that back here, that's that is really the focus for what we want to do and how we want to take our support offer forward.
Okay.
So I'm going totally the other direction. I think going into the future counterintuitively, because if I'd been asked this question 5 years ago, I would have been thinking that we would be using more of the digital infrastructure and becoming less connected to people. And now I actually think totally the opposite, that we actually have to become more connected with people and that we have to enable interpersonal relationships between the businesses, but we have to have a really solid digital knowledge and infrastructure behind that, because one of my fears is that particularly very small businesses and rural businesses are still not even at the starting stage of understanding how digital is going to be essential to their survival for the vast majority of them. And sometimes that's very basic. It's about how to use a computer efficiently. So I think it's that combination of absolutely in human relationship development alongside a really solid digital infrastructure that will help them to be more effective.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that brings us full circle, in a sense. I think, one of the things is it would be impossible now to try and, encapsulate this in one single sentence. Or you would like to?
No. That's what we've paid for.
But what I want to highlight is, for us, and I hope that's something that we have shared with you all, before and during this process. We're really at the beginning of a process in a sense. What we have done up until the run up to now is we've had some communications with one another, but it's really over the last day or day and a half that we've had the debates. that, you know, we've come back together, we've put things on the table, we've challenged one another. There have been, throughout the whole process, you know, been recording a lot of it. We have been having rapporteurs taking notes. We've had this figure of keynote listener that's been going through, sort of taking individual themes and following them as we go through the conference. And one of the things that we will be doing over the next weeks is starting to put some of that content out and letting you all benefit from those parts that maybe you couldn't attend, those debates that you will not be perhaps taking part in. And also, you know, beyond that, we see this as a first step, that, you know, there will be also some more personal communications. Perhaps we can do another one, perhaps indeed persuade you to sponsor that one. But yeah, I think for me it's been a really useful journey. I think we have tried to do what we've said, you know, which is to sort of bring the past, look into the future, but then we really have to bring it back to the present and say, what do we do now? What can each and every one of us do now? How could we build some of those partnerships that I've been hearing about, you know, the collaboration between us to do individual things? How can we learn from one another? Like your ecosystem, Jackie, in a way of businesses that are going around and helping us. How can we mimic that also at our level? So with that, I'd just like to say thank you ever so much. I am going to just pass on to Mark, who's going to retake on his job as Master of Ceremonies.
Okay.
And close off. But thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.